Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 16. Great episode today. We've got a couple of internet articles plus some MSP subreddit topics for you. And then we're going to get into our interview. Our interview this week is with Brad Proctor of University PC Care, based out of Greenville, North Carolina. Now, if you don't know North Carolina, it just went through Hurricane Florence. It's actually kind of still going through it. I recorded the interview with Brad last week. Happy to report he's okay. Checked in with him this morning. Everything's fine. They did have some damage in one of their offices, and some of their customers are a little bit underwater, but it looks like everyone is going to be okay. So stay tuned for that interview after this. So first up in our kind of best of internet is Wasabi. If you don't know Wasabi, they're one of our cloud storage partners. They have just secured $68 million in Series B funding. Now, why this is important is because, not everyone's heard of Wasabi. They provide cloud storage. They claim they're faster than all the rest and all those types of things. But what really gets people is in terms of their pricing. So they are offering a terabyte of storage for just $5 a month. Now compare that to AWS, which is $23 a month. So again, Wasabi is one of our partners. I'm happy to support them, and very happy to see that they've gotten this great infusion of cash. They're going to use it to continue building the company. So if you thought maybe they were just kind of fly by night, I think this is a good vote of confidence in their business model that people are looking to invest that much money into them. So next up is something you may or may not have heard of, but it deals with Microsoft Server 2019 Essentials. So Essentials is not going away in 2019. It may be the last version of Essentials, according to this article, but it is still there. Still has the same limitations, 25 users, 50 devices. And people are kind of happy that it's there, but then there's also some consternation because they've removed some of the features that was in Windows Server Essentials 2016. So things like remote access to the server, centralized PC backups, and Office 365 integration. So those things are gone in Server Essentials 2019, which means you may need to find a new backup solution, those types of things, or Microsoft recommends some other things too. The Windows Admin Center as a replacement for lost functionality. But it's kind of the writing on the wall in terms of Server Essentials essentially going away, and Microsoft wanting everyone to just use Office 365. And that makes sense. You can get pretty much everything you need on Office 365, without having to have in-house servers and those types of things. So, you love it or hate it. I'm sure that there's a good even divide in terms of people who like this and people who don't. And there's probably some really passionate people out there. So if you have some thoughts on this, definitely let me know. All right, let's move on to Reddit. So in the MSP subreddit this week, first up is this post-mortem of someone's MSP career. It's a very interesting read / rant. He kind of calls it a rant at the end, in terms of his experience of the last 20 years of working for an MSP. And I got to tell you, there's some pretty interesting stuff in here, stuff that he's seen. He's kind of disillusioned with the whole MSP market, the business model, consulting in general. Thinks that it's just, a lot of corruption and those types of things. So it's kind of one person's view of the MSP market. Now, what I think is good is, as he kind of goes on this rant, and then others kind of chime in and say, look, I'm sorry for your experience, but I haven't seen that working for MSPs. Or owners have chimed in saying, hey, I own an MSP and we don't do anything of this like this. We have codes of ethics and those types of things. So it's kind of interesting. If you read this, do you have similar experience as the original poster in terms of what he's seen going on? Or are you on the other side of the fence where, hey, look, MSP, yeah, sure, it's a lot of work, but guess what? The MSP I work for is great. Haven't had any issues like this. So it kind of goes back and forth in terms of what your experiences might be. So I definitely recommend you read the comments. And it's kind of, one person says nothing you mentioned is MSP specific, and we operate completely differently than you. So it's kind of, one person's experience may not be everyone's experience. So hopefully there aren't customers out there reading this that might think all MSPs operate in the same way, because they're not. And if you kind of read into it and read through all the different replies, and the original poster kind of goes in and talks about some of these things. It's kind of, it was an interesting topic, and I think one that's probably going to fester over the next couple of days, and get even more comments. So we'll see how that one goes. But definitely jump into this discussion if your MSP experience is much different. Next, we're going to switch to a little bit of in-house MSP marketing. So this person has posted that they've been hired by an MSP for their in-house marketing. So they're full-time. That's all they do is marketing for the MSP. And they state that they've gotten to the top of Google in their area for keywords, for IT and those types of things. Social media is okay, but not stellar. SEO, lead magnet, social isn't working. So this poster is really looking for ideas in terms of how do they keep their job, in terms of converting, bringing in the, building the sales funnel, bringing in leads, converting them into meetings or, to actual sales. So what I think is interesting, and from a community perspective, what I really like is, a couple of people, are saying, hey, great job on getting to the top spot. And then just kind of offering it advice. And one person says, hey, what's your website? Let us look at it and give you some suggestions. So the poster, does put in their website, and then kind of all the comments after that are really kind of giving suggestions on things that they could do, how to make changes, everything from, your banner ads or someone else's product for Lenovo and Dell. And, there's some other stuff that's like, maybe it's too technical. The footer's in the wrong place. So a lot of different suggestions. When I think that's great in terms of the community is, here's someone posting, hey, community, can you help me? I have questions, and the community's giving back. So I think that's great. So if you have any tips or tricks from a marketing perspective on website and lead gen and those types of things for this person, take a look at this post. The link to their website is in there. Have a look at it and offer some great suggestions. So really great post in terms of in-house marketing and what you might be able to do to make your website better and get more leads. And our last Reddit article today is who's in a vertical. So if you listened to last week's episode, we talked to Steve Taylor from MSP Webinars, and he recommended, hey, pick a vertical, because you can really specialize and understand the software, the intricacies of how these types of businesses work, and help you hone your craft. And it's kind of interesting because if you read through this, so the original poster is basically saying, have you marketed exclusively as serving as only that vertical? If not, what holds you back? How has it positively or negatively impacted your pricing strategy? So it was a series of 5 questions in terms of verticals. And what I found interesting was, some people say, hey, we're not specifically into verticals. However, they're working on getting out of some. So, one of the most points here is that they're getting out of the medical vertical. And that's because a lot of the small doctor's offices and medical shops, so to speak, are getting bought up by bigger conglomerates. And those conglomerates basically want to centralize everything, their HR, their finance, their IT, on their systems. So a lot of times, like this MSP, they just get little to no notice that they've been fired because the office they've been working with has just merged with a bigger company, and now they're going to centralize everything. So, and there's some other posts in here that kind of relate that same type of experience in terms of if you focus on a vertical and then all of a sudden there's a lot of consolidation within that vertical, like there is kind of in the medical industry right now. Previously in terms of some other industries where there was a lot of pressure to centralize and those types of things, it can seriously affect your business. One person talked about up in Canada when the oil price got too low, a lot of MSPs were specifically focusing on the oil fields, and those they went away because there was no longer any business because the price of oil dropped too much. So there is danger in focusing on a vertical in some of those areas. But another poster comments, that they focus primarily on veterinary care and animal hospitals and those types of things. And because of that, they know the intricacies of all the software that they use, the line of business applications that they use. I mean, everyone needs email and networking and VoIP and all those types of things. That's very similar. But there are some specific applications that verticals that will use, and they'll use the same applications across different companies. And they've said they've been very successful. And because they focus on that vertical, they can actually charge more from a pricing perspective because they have the experience and they know they can come in. And probably the previous provider didn't understand what they were doing. And these people come in because they know the business, they understand it. So it's kind of it's an interesting back and forth in terms of talking about verticals, if you should focus on them, some of the pitfalls if you focus too narrowly, I guess, or if something happens within the industry that you're focusing on. But then there's also some great success stories. So definitely take a read through it in terms of people's experience with verticals, and help it to grow your business. So with that, I am now going to turn it over to our interview with Brad Proctor from University PC Care. Again, he was going through Hurricane Florence over the weekend, but he's come out okay. So enjoy the episode. Thank you. Hello and welcome. Today I have Brad Proctor, who is coming to us from Greenville, North Carolina. We'll get to a little bit more of that here in a minute. Brad, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little about yourself and your business and who you guys serve and those types of things.
So we started as a kind of, I guess, any organization does in this particular sector, is we started out as just serving consumers, so your residential customers. And it was founded by Ashton James, and he focused on the consumer. And kind of as I came on board, we decided, because my background is more in business IT, to start offering business services, kind of because customers were pulling us, requesting us to do it. Down to one person handed us a contract and said, please.
Wow.
And so it was kind of, we were forced into do it. And we've loved every single bit of it since. So
yeah. So how long ago was that?
It was 4 or 5 years ago that we've been focusing on both. So we didn't, unlike a lot of MSPs, they'll drop their break fix and they'll focus specifically on managed services, and we have not done that. So
so you still serve the kind of consumer side and break fix side?
We do, and a lot of that comes with, we're an Apple Authorized Service Provider. And so by that standard, we're required to have a physical presence for the store. So
great. So kind of thinking about your career, what made you, it sounds like you maybe had an IT career first. What kind of made you go into the managed services side?
So I started my IT career actually in publishing. I worked for several newspapers, and my focus at the time was a mix between Mac OS in an enterprise environment, when that combined with Active Directory and things of that nature. So kind of a unique situation. And that's actually what brought me to where I am now. I helped Ashton get the Apple Authorized Service Provider off the ground. So
great. Yeah, because I know Mac is very popular in the publishing side.
It definitely is
on the enterprise side. So
and intermingling together is not always easy.
So looking at your customers, what do you kind of specialize now in a vertical on the managed services side, or do you serve everyone, or is there a niche?
There is no niche. The only niche we kind of have is when people come to us because of their Apple products. That would be the only kind of niche that we kind of fall into, just kind of by default of what we service. As far as a vertical, no. Even though we have kind of developed into, it seems like we help a lot of churches. That comes more from our networking division, where we are installing high density wireless networks. And I kind of like to say that's kind of a gateway drug for other things. we do their networking, and then by that they have other possible issues that they call us in for.
Now, I mentioned at the beginning that you are in North Carolina, and for everyone listening, we're recording this on September 13th, Thursday at 9 a.m. So you've got Florence heading right for you.
We do. Fortunately, and I guess unfortunately for certain areas, its path has changed a little bit.
Mhm.
So that's for us, we're still going to see quite a bit of high wind, which is obviously an issue for power outages. And we have an office in New Bern, North Carolina, which is
Okay.
located right on the kind of the mouth of the Neuse River.
Mhm.
And they are expected to see upwards of 7 to 9 feet of storm surge.
Wow.
And so that's pretty devastating for that area.
Yeah.
And so we had to close that store yesterday because there was a mandatory evacuation for that area. And it was a ghost town when I went there yesterday to check on
I'm sure.
customers. So
Yeah, I was surprised yesterday when you sent the email and because that you're in North Carolina and you said, hey, I'll be on tomorrow. I'm like, if you can't, don't, I mean, stay safe. But
well,
I'm glad you joined us.
yeah, thankfully the forecasting's changed a lot as far
Yeah.
as how far in advance
Hmm.
and so we're fairly prepared. And today we're basically working a half day today
Oh, okay.
to prepare.
So, I mean, other than, obviously closing that store, what other types of precautions have you taken to get your customers ready for this?
So on the customer side, the first thing obviously is they've been calling us nonstop, freaking out.
Yeah.
So a lot of what it comes to from a managed services side of it is just calming them down,
Hmm.
making sure that say, hey, this is why you pay us to do this. Um, and thankfully, the first thing we usually do is verify backups. Hopefully, we don't ever have to go to that point.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's something where it can be solved before that happens. And thankfully for the product we use for backup, thanks to Cloudberry, it makes it easy.
Okay.
And so that's been very reassuring to our customers with that portion of it. And then down to the simple things of what do you do with the infrastructure in your building,
Hmm.
down to telling them, hey, we always think about rising water, so it's easy to unhook things, put them on your desk, but there's also the possibility of falling water. So we've
Yeah.
been instructing our customers to not only lift the computers up or cover them in plastic,
Okay.
or if they can, take them with them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been what we've been discussing. We only have one customer that has to stay up during the process or during the storm,
Mhm.
and that's because they're in the financial sector and they service
Mhm.
the entire U.S.
Oh, wow.
And so that's been a little challenging, mainly because of where
Sure.
they're located. And they're basically going to hopefully move it to someone's house temporarily or somewhere that has power,
Yeah.
because most of their platforms, thankfully, are all cloud-based, so they can still
Yeah.
function other than phones and certain like local file storage.
Yeah. Because, I mentioned I went through Irma last year. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. And, if you're listening and you've never been through a hurricane or a tropical storm or something that's coming for you, the storm track changes every day. And with Irma, we thought we were getting a direct hit until about 4 hours before it came through. And, luckily it did a glance. We were on the western side instead of the eastern side. We still had to evacuate. Like you said, we had everything up as high as it could go in the house. Left the house, went and stayed with friends, and then power was out for quite a while after that. And luckily, our house, because our power lines are buried, we didn't lose power. So then we had all of our friends come here after the storm for air conditioning and hot water. So it's just kind of but the waiting is the worst part, and the changing on a constant daily basis. So because you're in North Carolina, I'm in Florida. Are there certain things that you do year round to kind of prepare for these types of situations?
I think the biggest thing that we have to do, and fortunately, we don't deal with these often,
Yeah.
considering how we stick out in the ocean, just like Florida. Thankfully, we don't. But really, it comes down to, and it's just how we approach customers, new customers or
Mhm.
existing customers, is that data protection of any kind is extremely important.
Yeah.
And because yes, if the entire eastern part of North Carolina is inundated with issues, your business is probably not going to be open in most cases.
Yeah.
Unless you serve, a larger area. So it's really about the recovery after the fact. At least for what we see, we in our particular situation. So it's really about the data protection portion of it, and anything they can move to either a hosted that's outside of this area or cloud-based is key, especially if they need to be back up.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. In terms of cloud-based services, whether it's Office 365 or G Suite or I don't. Apple doesn't necessarily. Apple has some services too, but do you kind of push your customers to cloud-based services versus on-prem solutions?
We do, and it all depends on, again, the industry and kind of the vertical they're in.
Yeah.
As far as email and things of that nature, yes, we try to push them as much as possible to Office 365 or G Suite, and also from like our standpoint as a company, we have some other competitors in the area that kind of build up data centers here. And early on, we made the decision to not do that and put most of our critical infrastructure actually in a data center in Ashburn, Virginia. So it's far away from this area where there's redundant internet connections versus here. There's not as much. And when storms approach like this, obviously you look back and you're very thankful you made that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely great. Now, are you going to be able to kind of maintain service? Like if any of your customers that have had to evacuate, do you have office space for them to use, if they need to, or, because I know some people, some MSPs in previous storms have been able to provide that. I'm not sure if you're equipped to provide that or not.
It's one of those questions that, we're fairly new in the MSP world as far as in this area. But it's something that now we actually recently opened a corporate office that we didn't have before. And so we do have some additional space that can be used if that situation arises. So the biggest issue would be where this building is located. Hopefully we would be able to offer that. If not, we have other ways to offer space and help them get back up. So yeah,
that's great. It's like I said, you can. It's really important to plan to know, kind of have an idea of what to do in these situations. And the thing about hurricanes is you typically have several days before it hits, even though you don't know where it's going to hit, but at least you have several days knowing it's coming, it's heading your way, you need to do something. Where other natural disasters, there's like no warning and they just happen. So it does allow you to give at least a little bit of prep time, so before it occurs. So, so just kind of, switching gears a little bit, we've talked a lot about preparedness, that this whole idea of disaster recovery and making sure that you're going to be able to get your customers back online. What about, as you're, just kind of, as you said, you're fairly new in the managed services side. What's been one of the biggest challenges to kind of growing that side of the business, or are you not having any challenges? Are your break-fix customers, like you said, begging you to take contracts?
Well, that was one particular situation. No, I think the early on it's how you market what you do, and early on in the MSP industry, at least what we saw was it was all focused on reducing downtime, or that there was that constant monitoring so that you reduce the downtime because you're being proactive versus reactive. And that's kind of hard, at least if you were a good break fix company, because the customer says, well, why do I want to pay you all this money when I get the same service if when I just call you to come out? And of course that's switched a little bit now. The more clients you get in it on your managed services side, the break fix customers have to wait. That's just kind of the nature of it. And so the nice thing is that we've gotten to that point. So it's easier to coerce the break fix customers over to the managed services. The other side of it is we've kind of flipped the marketing side to focus more on managed security and from the cybersecurity angle versus just being proactive on the maintenance side of things.
Yeah.
And that has been a huge uptick in how we're able to gain customers.
Yeah, I know every kind of conference I've gone to, over the last, several months, it's always, cybersecurity and all the tools and everything else. So definitely a good place to focus.
Yeah.
And, it's unfortunate because a lot of times, from, managed service providers, they're serving small businesses that don't have, the capability or the understanding of how some of these things happen or how some of these things work. And they're very vulnerable to a lot of these types of attacks. So it's very important.
Definitely.
So from a marketing standpoint, what do you do for marketing? Is it, do you kind of rely on the fact that you're an Apple Authorized reseller? Do you, Facebook? Do you, I guess, how do you get the word out there? Or is it mostly word of mouth?
A lot of it's word of mouth. As we started as a company, basically everybody was a technician. So we had the thing of techs are not always very good salespeople. It's just the nature of who we are. We're trying to solve problems, not trying to push something on someone. And within the past year, we've actually hired someone because we had two problems. We had a recruiting issue, and we also had a sales issue. And a lot of times, those two people, they do well in the same role.
Yeah.
At least what we found out. And so we actually brought someone in to do kind of boots on the ground sales for us. And that has kind of drastically changed how many prospects we're bringing in the door versus just marketing in general.
Yeah. Okay.
We've also strategic partnerships within the community, which actually has brought the most leads to us. And so what I mean by that is we don't do hosted phone systems or we don't do telecom. And so we partner with a local telecom company and we basically swap things back and forth. They don't do the networking side of it. So obviously voice over IP, we come in and do that. And so there's a lot of referrals back and forth between people in similar industries.
Yeah.
And that's actually been a huge increase, just working closely with trusted partners.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. We're looking at doing some similar things, from a marketing perspective of just, hey, let's do a joint webcast with a company that also, targets the managed service provider, aspect, but we don't compete and, we can provide complementary services. So definitely a good idea is to partner, with some of those folks, as long as, they're not eventually going to steal your business.
Yeah, no, we actually have an agreement between three different people, different companies. So
protection is good.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. Just in terms of managed services, you're fairly new. Do you have any advice for someone who might just be getting started out? A lot of people getting started in managed services, they're coming from an IT career. They think they can do it better. They think they can do it all on their own sometimes, or they have these grand ideas. Do you have any kind of advice for someone who's just getting started?
I think probably the most, at least this was kind of me because I'm a tech, is that when you get into it, it easily becomes about the tools that you have that you're going to be using to accomplish it. And you start focusing on features of those. And of course, the price tag based on the features sometimes can skyrocket. And as a new business, the more overhead, the harder it is to keep going. The biggest thing is I guess don't focus on the features. And the biggest thing that helped us, and we're still not that great at it, is being being very fair with billing and being consistent with billing. And the consistency with billing is that if it is really going to be a billed item, make sure you bill for it, because they easily will come back and say, well, you didn't bill me for this last time. And just being consistent with it, but fair at the same time. Because we hear both sides of the fence. Oh, you never sent me a bill, or they're better at billing than they are at actually fixing it. So just the being making that very simple between the two,
Yeah.
and consistent.
So there was a Reddit post last week about, entering time and what's the best way to kind of enforce that. Do you have any tips for making sure that you keep accurate accounting of time?
Just remember to do it. It's kind of difficult, because again, if you're our techs and then myself, we're techs. We just want to get in there, fix it, and the last thing we're thinking about is how much time we spent on it.
Yeah.
And it's really just making a habit of, if before you start doing anything, start a timer, or at least looking at the time, and making sure you track it. Whether it's where you have a customer that has unlimited support with you, where they're not billed by the hour, still knowing how much time you spend on it is really important. At least, if you're looking at later on, looking at margins, how much time are you really spending on these people that are paying you for unlimited support.
Yeah, and it's usually the 80-20 rule, so it applies everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about, I guess, from a community perspective, being in the managed services side, do you kind of consider yourself part of the MSP community? Are there places you hang out? Any type of resources, whether it's trade shows, online, those types of things?
We don't really go to many trade shows. It's just, honestly, we feel like we work so hard that at this point we just can't take the time to go and do that. See the benefit of it, just something that we haven't had time to do.
Okay.
As far as community, not a large part of what we do. I am part of, we use ConnectWise, Automate.
Yeah.
Used to be Lab Tech, so we're part of the Lab Tech geek community,
Okay.
either the Slack channel or used to be their forum, and that kind of gives us an insight on kind of where you would go with it, and how it can change. And of course, the nitty gritty of Automate. Our software services guy, he actually is bigger on Reddit than anything for what he does. Yeah, I see the benefit of it, definitely. Honestly, just time is the biggest part of it.
I know what you mean.
And me personally, I handle more of our wireless networking side of it. And so the wireless networking community is huge on Twitter.
Gotcha.
And that's a big community as well.
Yeah. So. Okay. Great. So from a technology perspective, we know you like wireless and I think you like Apple, but what technologies, whether it's consumer or business related, what technologies are you most excited about today?
See, I was prepared for this. So considering you picked the day after an Apple announcement, I guess I picked the day, but I would have to say on the Apple side of things, the Apple nerd in me would be the new iPhones. That's a kind of an easy answer. For the wireless nerd in me, I would say the 82.11ax standard that's coming out. And if you're not familiar with it, AC focused a lot on throughput, just trying to get the most bandwidth out of the particular protocols that you can, whereas they kind of went back and AX focuses on efficiency.
Okay.
And so what they're doing, which is really neat to me, is instead of making the channels wider to get more bandwidth, is they're subdividing those channels. And so it would offer a more efficient communication versus just a huge pipe.
Okay. So I have a kind of a personal question. I need to ask a wireless guy. We're looking at building a house. Okay. Should I have Cat 6 run during the building process, or is it not worth it? Can I rely on wireless?
If you're building the house, go ahead and run it. Mesh wireless is nice, but it still relies on that backhaul between the APs. And so if you can get a cable there, it's best to do it if you can.
Okay, all right. So that, because I asked the Slack channel the same question in random, and pretty much everyone says run it. So I'm like, okay, I will run the cabling, have them run it. Cost me a few extra $1,000, but probably be worth it. So that's kind of what technology you're most excited about. What technologies kind of worry you, or kind of give you pause when you think about some of their applications or capabilities?
Honestly, I think and mainly from a customer standpoint, is that the rise of cyber threats, not just to big names, not that that's always been that way, is that they're targeting smaller audiences than they kind of really ever have, particularly for ransomware. And just the rise of that is kind of concerning, and how it's become more aggressive than it really ever has. And that's probably the most concerning to me than anything at this point, at least to our clients.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and it's a multifaceted approach. There's not just one answer.
Yeah, no, I know it's end user training, it's technology, it's it's a whole host of different things to make sure everyone's protected. But the end user training, the education seems to be one of the most important.
Definitely, yes.
Software can fix most things, but it can't fix everything.
Yep.
So great. So we are now to our rapid fire round.
Okay.
So this is just really, really easy. I think there are like 7 real quick questions. Just give me your quick answer. The first one I already know the answer to, but we're going to do it anyway. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Oh, that's hard. I'll say Mac.
Okay. Amazon or Azure?
Amazon.
Okay. Local backups or cloud or both?
Both.
Everyone gets that question right. Cool. From a networking perspective, is DNS really always to blame?
Yes.
Okay.
DNS first.
Yes. Should you always virtualize? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. And finally, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
Vendor cold calls.
Okay. See, we're about 50-50 on that one. So, well, great. So that was easy. The first 2 I went as expected on the Apple side. So I'm an Android guy myself. I won't hold it against you. But
no, I don't hold it against anyone, honestly. I early on I used Nokia, the S60, which was Nokia's, and after that I just got an iPhone and never looked back. But I appreciate Android. Is the best way to put it.
Yeah. So the Apple event was yesterday, and the Android event is coming up October 9th. You get to see the new Pixel 3s and all that fun stuff. So looking forward to that. Just like you looking forward to the Apple event.
Exactly.
Okay. So with that, any kind of last parting wisdom, that you want to let the audience know before we go here?
I think the biggest thing is communicating with the customers, and not sticking to that stigma of what IT guys usually have. And communication is usually where we lack. So whether it's just talking to them before or after an issue and making sure they understand what happened and kind of what you did, that would be that's our biggest thing as a company.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So I'm going to check in with you probably Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. All right.
Because I don't want to put this on the web. We don't want to publish this. We usually publish on Tuesday. But I definitely want to check in with you. Stay safe.
Okay.
And like I said, I've been through it, so I know it's going to be a rough weekend, but hopefully everyone comes out good on the other side.
We're hoping so.
All right, great. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.